Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, am I truly living or just passing time? Most people never do. And that's the problem. You see, many of us are unknowingly wasting the most precious years of our lives. Not because we're lazy, not because we lack ambition, but because we're stuck, trapped in a cycle of routines that don't mean anything, chasing goals that were never really ours to begin with. We wake up, we rush to work, we answer emails, we hit deadlines, we scroll, we compare, we perform. And by the end of the day, we collapse into bed wondering where the time went and why it all still feels empty. And the saddest part, we don't even realize it's happening because it all feels so normal. Some are stuck in jobs they quietly hate, jobs that drain their spirit day by day. Others spend their energy trying to impress people, colleagues, bosses, followers, hoping that if they're seen, liked, praised, maybe then they'll finally feel worthy. But here's the truth. When your life is built on external approval, you lose sight of who you really are. So let me ask you this. Are you living your own life or someone else's version of it? Are you waking up with clarity or just surviving another Monday? Are you chasing purpose or just reacting to pressure? This is where the ancient wisdom of Stoicism enters, not as a dusty philosophy from history books, but as a living guide for reclaiming your time, your energy, and your direction. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they weren't just thinkers. They were survivors, warriors of the mind, people who faced chaos, loss, and uncertainty, and still found clarity by focusing on what they could control. And that's the key. Control, not over the world, not over other people, but over yourself, your thoughts, your actions, your attitude. That's where your power lives. Because while we can't choose every event that happens to us, we can choose how we respond. And when we master that, when we truly embrace the fact that our mind is ours to train, everything changes. So if you've ever felt like you're drifting, if you've ever looked at your reflection and thought, there has to be more to life than this, you're not broken, you're just waking up. This video is your invitation to pause, reflect, and begin again with intention, with clarity, with courage. The journey starts now, and it begins within you. 1. Chasing the uncontrollable. Let me tell you a quiet truth that ruins more lives than failure ever could. We spend years, sometimes decades, chasing things we can never fully control. Success, status, approval, the applause of others, the size of our bank account, the number of followers on a screen. But no matter how fast we run, we never quite arrive. Take Scott, for example. On paper, he had it all. A polished resume, a corner office, a schedule packed with power meetings. People looked up to him, admired his drive. But behind the scenes, he was a man slowly losing the people who mattered most. Each morning, he woke to a flood of unread messages, not from clients, from his wife, his kids, from a life that was patiently waiting for him to come back. But he didn't. He kept chasing metrics, recognition, that next promotion. He believed that being successful would finally make him feel worthy. Until one day the silence at the dinner table hit differently. The laughter of his children felt distant, like a memory he wasn't part of. And in that stillness, Scott realized he had built a reputation but lost his relationship. He had achieved influence but forfeited intimacy. That's the danger of chasing what you can't control. Marcus Aurelius said it best. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But most of us flip that wisdom upside down. We exhaust ourselves trying to bend the external world to our will, people, titles, outcomes. And in doing so, we hand over our peace, our energy, and our self-worth to forces that were never ours to begin with. And the cost? It's not just stress, it's disconnection, loneliness, burnout, a quiet ache that says, even though I'm busy, I feel empty. So ask yourself honestly, what are you chasing that isn't truly yours to hold? Where in your life have you confused visibility with value? And what simple joy have you been overlooking while racing toward a moving finish line? The Stoics taught us that freedom begins the moment we turn inward, when we stop trying to control the storm and instead learn to control the sails of our own mind. That's not passive, it's powerful. It means realizing that your reaction matters more than their opinion, that your clarity matters more than your calendar, and that the wealth you build inside, peace, presence, principles, is the only kind that can't be taken away. Scott didn't realize that until it was nearly too late, but you don't have to wait. You can pause now. You can realign. You can ask, what's truly worth my energy? Because the moment you stop chasing what's out there and start returning to what's in here, that's when your life begins to shift. That's when you go from running to actually living. But what if the real trap isn't just what you chase, but who you compare yourself to? That's where we go next. 2. Comparison, the quiet thief of joy. It starts with a scroll. You open your phone just to check the weather, and suddenly you're staring at someone else's highlight reel. A friend's exotic vacation, a stranger's picture-perfect home, someone 10 years younger launching a six-figure business or running their third marathon. And without even realizing it, your breath shortens, your chest tightens, a quiet voice whispers, "Why not me?" We've all been there, caught in the invisible web of comparison, measuring our worth against polished photos and curated captions, thinking we're falling behind in a race that was never ours to begin with. But here's the truth the algorithm won't tell you. Comparison doesn't motivate, it drains, it doesn't inspire, it steals. And the more you stare outward, the more you forget what truly matters inward. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire and still questioned himself daily, once said, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, not the number of likes, not the number of trophies, not the image you project." And yet many of us spend hours every day feeding our minds with thoughts shaped by other people's timelines. We start believing that someone else's path is the standard and ours is the exception, that their success invalidates our journey. But Stoicism teaches us something radically liberating. You are not here to compete. You are here to align with your values, your growth, and your purpose. So instead of asking, "Why am I not like them?" try asking, "What am I grateful for today?" Try writing down 3 small wins before bed. Try reflecting on one area where you showed integrity or patience, even when no one was watching. Because the antidote to comparison isn't achievement. It's attention. Attention to the life you're already living. The simple joys, the quiet progress. The values you're building even when no one applauds. When you root yourself in things that don't depend on others, gratitude, courage, honesty, something powerful happens. You stop living for validation and you start living for meaning. So let me ask you, when was the last time you acknowledged your own growth without comparing it to someone else's success? When was the last time you looked in the mirror and said, "I'm proud of the person I'm becoming, regardless of how fast or slow it's happening"? You don't need to win the world's approval. You just need to remember that your worth was never up for debate. Let go of the illusion. Return to your lane and reclaim the energy that comparison has quietly been stealing from you. Your story is unfolding beautifully, imperfectly, and at its own pace. And that is more than enough. Even worse than comparing yourself to others is losing yourself in a time that no longer exists or hasn't yet come. Let's talk about it. 3. Lost in time. The cost of ignoring the present. Have you ever noticed how often your body's here, but your mind is somewhere else entirely? Maybe it's replaying a mistake from 5 years ago. Maybe it's fast forwarding into a future filled with what ifs and worst case scenarios. Either way, you're not really here. And that's the tragedy most people never see coming. We're haunted by the past, hunted by the future, and somehow the only moment we truly own, the present, keeps slipping through our fingers like sand. Regret says, you should have done better. Anxiety says, what if it all falls apart? And in between those two voices is silence. A silence that we've forgotten how to sit with. But here's what the Stoics knew, and what many of us forget. You can't live yesterday. You can't control tomorrow. You only ever have now. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. It's not meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up. Because the truth is, every time you drift into memory or worry, you give up a moment you can never get back. A moment that could have held peace, or laughter, or clarity. A moment that could have changed everything. But instead you hesitate, you rehearse, you retreat. Why? Because being present is uncomfortable. It forces us to feel the wounds we buried, the conversations we've avoided, the version of ourselves we've postponed becoming. And so we escape into nostalgia, into fantasy, into distraction. But no amount of scrolling, planning, or numbing will bring you home to yourself. Only presence can do that. And presence begins with a simple, radical question. What is real right now? What's in front of you? Who's with you? What part of yourself have you been too busy to notice? When you start answering that question, something shifts. You stop fearing silence. You stop running from discomfort. And slowly, you begin to return to the only place healing and growth can ever happen. This moment. So the next time your mind tries to escape into the past, remind it, that chapter is written. And the next time it races ahead into the future, say, that page hasn't turned yet. Then ask yourself gently, what can I create, feel, or change right now? Because life isn't waiting for the perfect moment. It is the moment. And the more you practice being here, the more you'll realize joy has always been here too, just waiting for you to return. Stillness is the answer, but fear often pulls us away from action. And this next fear, it paralyzes more dreams than we'll ever know. Fear of failure, the silent thief of potential. Let me ask you something personal. How many times have you held back, not because you couldn't do something, but because you were afraid to fail? You had the idea, the dream, the pull in your gut telling you to go for it. But then fear crept in. What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough? What if people see me fall? And so, you froze. We don't talk about this enough, but fear doesn't always show up as panic. Sometimes it shows up as procrastination. Sometimes it wears the mask of perfectionism. And sometimes it just whispers, maybe tomorrow, until years go by. The Stoics knew this enemy well. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, what you're afraid of isn't a stop sign. It's a starting point. You're supposed to stumble, You're supposed to doubt. That's where strength is born. Amor fati. The Stoic idea that we don't just accept fate, we embrace it. Even the struggle, even the setbacks, even the rejections. And that reminds me of a story, one you might already know. Colonel Harlan Sanders didn't find success until he was in his 60s. He walked into restaurant after restaurant over 1,000 times, trying to sell his fried chicken recipe. Most of them slammed the door in his face. If he had stopped at the 500th no, we never would have heard of him. But he kept going, not because he was fearless, but because he refused to let fear decide the ending. And what about you? What dream have you shelved because you thought failure was the finish line? What calling have you ignored because it didn't feel safe? Here's a different perspective. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. It teaches, it sharpens, it humbles. Every stumble is shaping the future you haven't yet lived, but only if you act. You see, Stoicism isn't about being emotionless. It's about discipline. It's about having the courage to show up anyway, to say, I might fall, but I will rise better. So if fear is standing between you and your next step, ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? And what will it cost me if I never try? Then take the smallest step, speak the idea, write the sentence, make the call, because the longer you wait, the heavier fear becomes. But the moment you act, that weight begins to lift. Courage isn't loud, it's consistent. And when you pair it with faith in yourself, in your path, in something greater, you'll find the strength to move forward even when you're scared. Don't let fear steal another day from you. Let it sharpen your resolve. Let it guide your growth. Because the thing that scares you most might just be the thing that sets you free. But fear isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind something quiet, something that looks innocent, waiting. Let's talk about procrastination. 5. Procrastination, the silent killer of dreams. Most of us don't fail because we didn't try hard enough. We fail because we didn't try at all. Not out of laziness, but hesitation. We say, I'll start when I have more time, when the timing feels right, after the chaos settles down. But here's the truth. Life doesn't wait. It doesn't send reminders. It doesn't offer guarantees. And the longer we postpone action, the more silently our dreams start to rot beneath the surface. Take Luke, for example. He was a passionate writer. At 25, he had a story burning in his heart, a novel he believed could change lives. But every day he found a reason to delay. I'll write when I feel inspired. Next week will be clearer. After this job project ends. Weeks turned into months, months into years, and one day Luke realized he hadn't written a single chapter. That dream, still inside him, but faded, quiet, weakened. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And procrastination is the most seductive form of waste because it disguises itself as patience. It feels soft, harmless, but every time you wait, you surrender a moment you'll never get back. That job you didn't apply for, that book you didn't start, that conversation you didn't have. Each one was a chance, lost in the fog of later. But here's the good news. Action doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't need a blueprint or a 5-year plan. It just needs to begin. One page, one phone call, one push against the resistance. Because the moment you take a single step, momentum is born. And momentum is what shatters the illusion of perfect timing. So let me ask you, what have you been waiting on? What dream keeps whispering, please just start? What would your life look like if you stopped postponing and started building? The Stoics believed in action, Imperfect, honest, forward-moving action. Not because it guarantees success, but because it honors time. And time, as they knew well, is the one currency you can never earn back. Luke eventually opened his old manuscript. Hands trembling, heart unsure, he started typing. Just a paragraph, then a page. He didn't need lightning bolts or applause, just courage, just movement. And little by little, his book took form. Not because he waited for the right moment, but because he chose to create it. So if you're still telling yourself, I'll do it someday, make someday today, even if it's small, especially if it's small, because the only way to reclaim your time is to begin using it. You might not be lazy. You might just be lost. And that's the next silent destroyer, drifting without clear direction. 6. Drifting, the cost of living without clear direction. Have you ever had that sinking feeling that despite being busy, despite checking every box on your to-do list, you're not actually going anywhere? You wake up, do what's expected, respond to what's urgent, but deep down, you know something's missing. You're moving, but not with meaning. You're alive, but you're not really living. That's what drifting feels like. It's subtle, it's quiet, and it's dangerous. Because unlike failure, drifting doesn't hurt right away. It doesn't come with alarms or breaking points. It just slowly erodes your time, your clarity, and your spirit. And by the time you realize it, years have slipped through your hands. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus gave us a bold but simple instruction. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. But most people skip that first step. They never define the what. So they spend their lives following someone else's plan, working a job they didn't choose, chasing goals they never questioned. And one day they wake up and wonder, how did I get here? But it doesn't have to be that way. Look at the story of Chris Gardner. Yes, the man whose life inspired the pursuit of happiness. He went from sleeping in train stations with his son to becoming a successful stockbroker. Not because life gave him perfect conditions, but because he chose a clear direction and committed to it relentlessly. Every morning, despite exhaustion, he showed up. He studied. He practiced. He held his son. He kept going, not because the path was easy, but because the destination was clear. And that's the turning point for all of us. Purpose doesn't come from luck. It comes from clarity. You don't have to map out your entire future today, but you do need to start asking deeper questions. Who do I want to become? What do I truly value beyond money, praise, or comfort? And what small steps today would align me with that vision? Because when you live by your own values, integrity, purpose, courage, something shifts. You stop drifting. You stop chasing random metrics of success. You begin moving with intention. The Stoics weren't against ambition. They were against aimless striving. They believed that a meaningful life begins with internal alignment and is sustained through daily action. So if you feel lost right now, don't panic. Start small. Write down 3 values you want to live by. Then list one action, however simple, that brings you closer to them. Do that, not once, but consistently, and you'll feel the fog begin to lift. You don't need to see the entire staircase, but you do need to take the next step. Because when your life is guided by inner direction, not outer distraction, every moment begins to matter again. Don't let your story be written by accident. Choose your course, define your what, and then do what you have to do. Even with a goal, you can still fall short if you never stop to reflect. Let's explore what happens when we live on autopilot. The power of self-reflection, why avoiding yourself costs you everything. Let me ask you something most people never pause to consider. When was the last time you actually sat with yourself and asked, did I live today according to who I want to be? Not, did I get everything done? Not, did others like me today? But truly, was I honest? Was I kind? Did I live with integrity? Most of us rush through our days without ever looking in the mirror. We check our phones more often than we check in with our own hearts. And yet we wonder why we feel lost, exhausted, or disconnected from our own life. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and one of history's great Stoic minds, ended each day by asking himself a simple but powerful question. Have I behaved in accordance with my values today? It wasn't about guilt. It was about alignment. Because without reflection, we drift. We fall into patterns, not because they're meaningful, but because they're familiar. And slowly the days blur together. The gap between who we are and who we wanted to be grows wider. You see, ignoring self-reflection doesn't mean life stands still. It means it moves forward without you. You wake up one day wondering why your relationships feel shallow, why your goals feel pointless, and why joy feels like something you once knew but can't quite reach anymore. And the tragic part? It could have been avoided. All it takes is the willingness to look inward, not to judge, but to understand. Journaling is one of the simplest but most powerful tools for this. Not pages and pages, just a few lines. What did I learn today? Where did I react instead of respond? Did I live with courage or avoid discomfort? Because the moment you start asking honest questions, you give yourself permission to course correct, to notice patterns that don't serve you, to reconnect with values like patience, courage, honesty, and empathy. Not as abstract ideas, but as daily practices. You also start to build a deeper relationship with yourself. And that, my friend, is where real freedom begins. Not the kind that's loud and dramatic, but the quiet kind. The kind that lets you sleep peacefully at night because you know you were true to yourself. Yes, it takes humility to admit where you've fallen short, but it also takes strength to grow from it. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be aware, to learn, to adjust, to move forward wiser than you were yesterday. So tonight, don't scroll past the moment. Pause, reflect. Write it down if you need to, because a few honest minutes a day might just be what brings your life back into alignment. Don't live on autopilot. Live awake. Live aware. And above all, live with the courage to face yourself so you can finally live as your truest self. But perhaps the most dangerous trap of all is thinking we still have time. Let's face what we all avoid: change and the fear of it. 8. Fear of change. The hidden wall that holds you back. Let's be honest. Change is scary. Even when we say we want more from life, more freedom, more peace, more purpose, something inside us pulls back the moment that more requires letting go of the familiar. We stay in jobs that drain us. We hold on to routines that no longer serve us. We postpone big decisions because the unknown feels too big, too risky. But here's a quiet truth most people don't say out loud. It's not change we fear, it's loss. Loss of comfort, loss of control, loss of identity. And yet the cost of not changing is far greater, because what we don't change, we end up resenting. And what we delay eventually becomes regret. The Stoics knew this well. That's why they practiced something called memento mori, a simple but powerful reminder. Remember, you will die. Not to be morbid, but to wake us up. Because when you truly realize that your time is finite, you stop waiting for the perfect moment. You start asking, what am I afraid of losing? And what might I gain if I actually step forward? The truth is, many people only make changes after a breaking point, when pain outweighs fear. But you don't need to wait for your life to fall apart to take it seriously. Growth is not supposed to feel comfortable. That doesn't mean something's wrong. It means you're alive. It means you're stretching beyond your limits, beyond who you were yesterday. And yes, the path will feel uncertain. Yes, people may not understand, but isn't that better than waking up in 10 years asking, what if I had tried? Let me tell you, nothing stays the same anyway. Even when we resist change, time moves forward. Seasons shift, opportunities pass. And if we don't move with them, we get left behind, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So today, ask yourself, what change have I been avoiding? Not because it's wrong, but because it's uncomfortable. What dream have I buried under the illusion of safety? And what would happen if I embraced the discomfort and stepped into it anyway? Because this is what Stoicism teaches. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting with clarity in the presence of it. And real freedom, it begins the moment you stop letting fear decide your future. So don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait until the weight of regret becomes unbearable. Let this be the moment you say, I choose change. I choose growth. I choose life. Because you weren't born to just survive routine. You were born to evolve through it. And every brave choice you make, no matter how small, builds the path to a life you'll actually be proud to live. You've made it this far. So now the real question, how do you take back control of your life before it's too late? The Stoic path to self-mastery begins now. So now that we've walked through the quiet ways we waste our lives, not out of rebellion, but out of routine, not out of failure, but out of fear, let's pause and look back. Honestly, we chase what we can't control. We compare ourselves to strangers on screens. We escape the present moment, paralyzed by the past or obsessed with the future. We let the fear of failure hold our potential hostage. We procrastinate until opportunities slip away. We drift without clear goals, confusing busyness for purpose. We avoid self-reflection, afraid of what we might find. And we fear change so deeply, we mistake stagnation for safety. 8 habits, silent, common, deadly. But here's the truth. You don't need to be extraordinary to change your life. You just need to begin reclaiming your power, right here, right now. And that's where the Stoic mindset shines, because it doesn't demand that you fix everything overnight. It simply invites you to focus on what you can control: your thoughts, your actions, your attitude, your values. That's the starting point of self-mastery. And once you begin that inward journey, just one day at a time, everything begins to shift. So where do you start? Start by keeping a Stoic journal. It doesn't need to be perfect, just honest. Write down, what did I do today that aligned with my values? Where did I hesitate? Where did I grow? Start by reflecting daily. Even 5 minutes of awareness can break months of unconscious habit. Start by staying present. Breathe. Look around. Feel what's real, not what's feared. Let go of comparison. Live by your own values. Practice daily discipline, not because someone's watching, but because you are. And above all, don't wait. Don't wait for the breakdown. Don't wait until your energy is drained, your dreams forgotten, or your spirit numb. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. You don't need more time. You need more intention. So the question is, are you ready to stop drifting and start directing? Because life will pass either way. The difference is whether it passes with you fully in it or without you even realizing it. Start now. Start small and step one quiet, courageous choice at a time onto the path of self-mastery. Your life isn't waiting, neither should you.